Welcome back to The Real Recovery Show. We air every Friday at noon, and all of our episodes are up on themeetingspace.com, so you can see them at any time. We've had a lot of different shows, and I've got to have wonderful conversations with people, learning even more about people that I've known for years, and as well as hear some super inspiring stories. And I love, in particular, people who have had a harder time in their life, have had what we would consider more of a low bottom, because this is the underdog. This is the person who maybe even society has said, no way is this person gonna turn their life around. And you know, whether or not you're somebody who feels like you're in a hopeless place in your life and you can't imagine anybody can understand or feel or have had experience what you have, or if you feel like, you know what, you're not so bad and you haven't, you know, ended up losing anything or going through anything overtly bad, either way, you can hear some experience, strength, and hope today that can help you realize that, wow, if this person can heal, then so can I. And that's the whole purpose of these episodes, is to provide a forum for a real talk and to share in a way that is super transparent. And I'm willing to talk about anything I've ever had happen to me or by me, and for the purpose that maybe I can have a voice that somebody else doesn't currently have, so that they could hear their story or something and maybe think, wow, like if this girl can heal from all of that and have the attitude that she has now, you know, maybe I can walk through this too. And that's what we do. That's what we do in recovery. So if you've been in recovery for a long time, or if you're new to it, welcome. It's an amazing journey that we do together, where we tap into who we are really supposed to be, who we really, really are underneath it all, and have a second chance at having a real life, you know, at really being able to be alive, right? Not just coping or whatever. And so I'm joined here today with Brian Pineda. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did. Okay. How are you, Lisa?
And I've heard his story before, and I feel like he has a very inspirational story, and I feel like when I heard it even recently, I was like, I have to have him on the show because he has such a strong message. But even before that, I've been very attracted to you because you're so focused. And you could tell that you're taking it all very seriously. You know, and I know that in your story you didn't at one point take it seriously, but it's clear that you're taking it seriously now. And I love when I see that, because it's the people that take it the most serious that are like the driving force of so much in the recovery community. And so I'm happy to walk that walk with you. And so if you could start us off and tell us a little bit about what little Brian was like and what that was like for you, that would be helpful.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy because I feel like sometimes I'm very much still little Brian growing up in this world.
Okay, so tell us what happened yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. Little Brian, let's see. Raised with two present parents, had two older brothers. For the most part, we were, the way I would best describe it, like a first world poor family, okay. Which living in Orange County, which is one of the finish lines of the world, in my opinion, is still top 1% of the world. And my parents worked really hard to provide what we needed. And then my dad took a chance in business. And all of a sudden we mixed in not only what we needed, but also what we wanted as well. And we became middle-class Americans. And it was, I think it was integral. Like, it was really important in my story that we started out learning the value of a dollar, let alone growing up in such an affluent society on the poor end, and then moving into middle-class Americans and really being exposed.
How old were you when you had that transition?
Let's see. That transition happened at the age of 12.
Okay.
Yeah. We moved from Santa Ana to Fountain Valley, and it took
right
off
through
from there.
Puberty.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You have arrived.
Right. I always felt like I was a late bloomer too when it came to a lot of things like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there you go. Okay, and so was there any alcoholism in your family that you're aware of?
The truth is this, I'll tell you what. I can tell you that other family members had, we'll say, their opinions on our family, primarily on my dad's side. of the family, but I wasn't aware of it.
Okay. And plus, we can't diagnose somebody else.
No,
Yeah.
that
And they
not
wouldn't
my
want
lane.
us to anyway.
I did a lot of it. Believe me, I could tell you what your problems were, but when it came, no, we don't.
Yeah,
don't do
but
that
you felt like there was alcoholism.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you? Like to say that, like for me, in my family, there was definitely don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. There was definitely people turning to alcohol and drugs for when they wanted to change the way they thought or felt in the moment. You know, there was definitely that, and I observed that, and so I lived in a way that I couldn't feel my feelings, and I saw what people did with their feelings, and so that was the only tool I ended up learning. And so I feel like in that way, I don't know that necessarily made me an alcoholic and addict, but it definitely was a part of what the conditioning, the thought process that was like, okay, well, I guess if we don't have another way, this is the way I gotta do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's things I picked up along the way, especially when you make that transition of a social standing, we'll say, economic standing, but primarily in the household, the message I was receiving, which to this date, I don't know if it was ever said. It's just what I felt like I was getting in life. I'm very much an emotionally guided creature, speaking of alcoholism. But I felt like it was an attitude of we don't talk about our problems.
Yeah.
We sweep them under the rug. We were a Catholic family, so therefore, you know, it happens in the family and we take direction from the Catholic Church and this is how you do things and we look really good on the outside.
Right.
We present really well, but we're a normal family inside the four walls of a house. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like even though, honestly, like, the neighborhood knew what was going on in my house, but there was very much that kind of like, you know, smoke screen, you know, like we don't, you know, and I feel like that also psychologically played into my thinking for a long time about how much emphasis I put into my appearance and like seeming like I have it all together when inside I might be dying in that moment.
Yeah, I would say this. I think that was probably what we were shooting for, but the truth was, like, that's what everyone else was shooting for. Me, I think I was just a wild child from the get-go. Like, I remember a shirt when I was young called Bad to the Bone, and like, for some reason, without really knowing what that means on a soul level, I was living up to that. Like, everyone could see it. They called me the Tylenol kid growing up. You know what I mean? Because you had to take Tylenol if you watched me. It was just a headache, touching everything, running around, getting into the mess. And from an early age, just doing things and lying about it and smiling, like small things. But it was just like, that was something I don't know if inherent is the right word, but it's just something that I learned. And I can't say it was from my family. I think it was, I guess I would say it was inherent. Like, that's just how I was. I can't point it to a family member or anything that taught me that. Which I think just
it doesn't have to be that somebody emulated it. It could be that it was your way of finding your own part of the merry-go-round of the family system. You know, like everybody feels like they need to have their own identity and their own way, and so if you look at the whole family unit, you tend to find, oh, that person was the scapegoat, oh, that person was the black sheep, oh, that person was the hero child, you know, and like you kind of go, and there's one of each, you know, and so if maybe for whatever reason, you know, you felt like you needed to lie and do that because that was what gave you your own sense of like self or power or protection or whatever, that's for you and your therapist.
I was just going to say, how much do you charge an hour? Because I've just found out so much about myself right now. I'm like, can't wait to go home and process this.
I love how the mind works.
Yeah.
And I love understanding alcoholism and addiction because it's not just about drinking or doing drugs. It's about a thought process that says that alcohol and drugs was the solution. So there must be something that goes if then, drink. You know, and to be able to get down to like what's really going on. And oftentimes there's subtle little experiences or just a general understanding of like how we handle thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
You know, that can just be that very fertile ground that we build our dysfunction on, you know, where we think about what we ended up needing to learn when in our recovery. It'll show us some of the things that we didn't know before that we needed, that had we known how to feel our feelings and process properly, we wouldn't have ended up there, right?
Right.
I learned so much in recovery that maybe I would have learned in a healthy childhood, whatever that looks like. Don't even know. Haven't really seen one. But I definitely know was not present. I know my parents didn't have those tools either. And it's not just in alcoholism, it's in our society.
Yeah, it's and I always respect everyone's different walk of life. And I could tell you as a child and someone who heavily engages in victimization and self-pity, like I'm a guy that does underwater basket weaving and self-pity. I'm so comfortable
Look
there.
how long I can hold my breath while I feel sorry for myself.
Pretty much. I could have told you because of lying is just through and through my story, always looking for an identity, that I felt like I had childhood trauma and things like this, and to a certain extent I did. But the truth was, like, I think overall, as I get to know more people inside and outside of recovery, every family is crazy, you know what I mean? In their own way. It's got its own dynamic, and real families have real problems, and I just was so susceptible to immediately falling into victimization.
So there's this
just
concept
skewed.
in recovery called the magnifying mind, right? Where you take something and it could be something really small and nobody would even think it's a thing, but you like focus on it and make it into a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And so like we do this as alcoholics and addicts, right? And I think that the sensitive child syndrome of like growing up and how everything is like me and all about me and how could you do this to me and this is the most horrible thing in the world is again this like snowball effect of not having any tools to deal with my feelings and my actual thoughts that are chewable, and then end up with, you know, everything feels more and more and more because there's this aggregate of all this stuff that I'm not dealing with building up. I had a friend once say, and I just heard this, I don't know, I think it was like maybe like 7 years ago, and I thought this was like the coolest thing ever. He said, and you probably have heard this, but he says it's like almost like your life is a station wagon and you keep throwing wrappers and junk into the back because you don't have a garbage, you don't have any way to process this, right. And then something that happens, you know, you stop, somebody's passing the road or there's a light you didn't see or something like that, you stop short. And that should not be an event. Nothing should happen, you know, but all this crap comes like on top of us,
right.
And it is, the world is coming to an end.
Straight up.
How could this be happening to me? And it's hysterical because it's historical, and yeah, and I feel like there's some truth to some of us growing up being more sensitive, you know, because we're building up this energy, this things matter too much, right. You know, and we don't have, we're in our head too much. We have a story of ourselves that's been building and it's full of shame or whatever, and so we're our skin is more sensitive on the outside, you know.
I wonder where my story would have gone if like it actually measured up to how I thought of myself.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it just never personified itself in real life. Like I was always trying to play catch up to that idea.
Yeah. Like we're all this or we're all that.
Yeah.
You know, like we can't just be, you know. But yeah. Okay, so as you're growing up, when did you start using alcohol and drugs, do you think?
15 for sure. I actually hold it back. Not that this is a big deal, but I put it on there because every person who drinks and uses the way I do, we just know the very first one. 3
right,
years old.
The click.
Yeah, 3 years old, sitting on Dad's lap after my brother's baseball practice, and he's got a Corona in front of him, and I was like, I want to try that, and he lets me. Like I think that was just part of our. And I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but what I've noticed in my family on the Mexican heritage of my side, that's acceptable. Like you're in front with your family, and I take a swig, and I remember it was the nastiest thing. I mean, I'm not the guy that's like, yeah.
But they like it.
And it's like you're feeling a part of, and you do. And I mean, I remember feeling gross and everything. I don't pick up alcohol again until I'm 15. 2 martinis. Mm-hmm. I mean, you had to use a spatula to get me off the floor after about maybe 8 minutes. I'm crawling up the stairs, and I'd never experienced alcohol on that level. I tasted it when it was nasty. Right. Now I'm getting these effects that I'm frightened. That's the state I'm in. I'm frightened from this stuff, but I survive it the next morning. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's something to be said about that. Like when you get on the other side of it and you gain that knowledge, and now you're kind of like, okay, here's an expectation. There was definitely a release there. I was getting a reaction I've not experienced before, and it felt good. Like before, I was crawling up the stairs like army crawling, gravity's pushing as hard as it can. There was that brief moment of just like complete liberation from everything I knew. Because I was, outside of the problems that I had as a youth in school, I was a goody two shoes. I was on new footing. We changed cities in Fountain Valley when we moved. And I was on new footing, ASB, getting at least B's and A's, maybe a couple C's here and there. But, like, for the most part, 3.0 grade average. Like, and I'd not been doing that before. And so I just was on this new footing and
because your head could be silent. You just silent, and like that's the buildup of the self-consciousness of growing up so like hyper focused, you know, on too much of what everything means to us, and being able to like tone that down. That's what alcohol and drugs did for me, because I felt like I even felt like I couldn't even have done as well as I did in college if I didn't have, and I planned my classes, by the way. I planned my classes around my using schedule, you know, like I knew not to have classes in the morning. Like I was just like, you know, what I had 3.9 average, so something worked, you know, and I was legitimately doing the work. I was also like in bed with my alcoholism, and so I had like that to take care of while I was doing that, which if you think about it, it's quite the feat that I actually got that grade. But yeah,
we're resilient people.
Can you imagine what we could have done?
Oh my gosh.
But I don't know that I could have done much just not drinking and doing drugs, because the thinking that I had wouldn't have had that kind of confidence and will to like to do stuff. I was so like depressed all the time and angry and full of all that ick, you know, that I don't really feel like I would have really accomplished much.
My goals,
anyway.
You probably have some heavy hitting goals. Mine was like to have the college experience without doing school. So let's go travel to this university, this college, this state university, and let's go.
And you did sports,
have some
right?
fun. Yeah, absolutely. I played. I got to play some professional racquetball. So accompanied with like getting into drinking and using, and mind you, like I don't use and drink for the first time to escape until I'm 18. So once again, like I said, I'm a late bloomer in this kind of stuff as far as where I grew up, but when I did, boy, I was off to the races. And I remember the first time, like I smoked some pot over a friend's death, and the very next trip, about a month later, I go up to Santa Barbara, and I smell it. My friend and I polished off easily a bottle of Jack Daniels, laying on the floor, and I smell this sense, and I'm just like,
do you like the smell of pot?
I did. I was a surfer boy. I tolerate it.
I love the smell of pot.
I did. I was all about it.
I love it. But I was such a pothead. That was one of my addictions. Same. And so people either like have a strong aversion for it, or they still like have an affinity. And if over a little bit I was concerned that I was romancing the drink, so to speak. But I know like I don't want to ever do that again. But I do like the smell, and I have to make sure I don't get any like contact high. I just like the smell of it. It's really, really weird. I just do.
I was all about it. So for about 7 years, I was doing that stuff heavily. Surfing was a big part of it, water polo, and then playing sports. Like I would use it, not only, I mean, let's just face it, I was using it to breathe for the most part. But I was using it like post-workout especially too. It was actually helping with, I felt like it was helping with just the recovery of my body, because I was
training
pretty hard.
Isn't that interesting how we tie stuff in?
Oh my gosh, I'll make it work real quick. Right? You know what I mean? I'm like a MacGyver for drugs and alcohol. Yeah. I have the right contortion. I got this.
Me too. Oh my God, that's so funny. I remember when I was like trying to quit smoking, as I smoked for 10 years. It was one of my methods of getting off of pot was to switch to cigarettes. Anyway, whatever. It's not necessarily that it works, but it helped me pass out, so whatever. But I switched from Marlboros to American Spirits. And I told myself, you know, I'm not having all the chemicals. This is healthier.
Yes.
And so, like, I rode that natural cigarette story narrative for, like, a while.
Right.
Telling myself it's healthier, until finally enough bullshit was called, you know, where my dog's like, and leaving the room. And I was just like, it's still smoking. Like, stop. Right. You know, so yeah.
I'm like a sticky hand. You know that toy? I'm like a sticky hand for like, if it sounds really good and I can use this and I think I know my audience, that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that one. This one sounds really good. Just rolls off the tongue.
And we were just fooling ourselves.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so when did you start becoming more dependent upon?
Oh boy, let's see. 19. So I quickly rolled into ecstasy. And I think about some of the things I rolled in ecstasy, and what it was I was already a resentful person as it was, and that plays a big part in the propulsion of my use. And this is how, like, I'm going to show you life kind of guy. Like, I had to work on July 4th. I don't get to go drink and party with my friends a block away from the beach like we do in Huntington Beach. And I know, right? Woe is me. I'm working in this, like, great mall, and I'm working for Banana Republic at the time. And I remember I decided I got 19 pills of ecstasy, and I'm going to take one every single hour of that shift. I'm going to show you guys because you didn't let me off work. And then,
whoa.
And I'm taking one every hour. And, like, if you've ever done ecstasy, like, you cannot avoid the torrential downpour when you're taking a pill every hour. Your eyes are rolling. You know what I mean? And I finally get out, and I got out of work successfully because at that time I could manage it. Like, outside of the torrential downpour and maybe the change of shirt about every half hour.
Going through all of their inventory.
Oh, my gosh, right? Yeah, basically a walking fashion model inside the store. I get to my friend's place, and now I'm combining shots of tequila with washing them down with the shots. And now everyone's already messed up. They can't tell that I messed up. This is perfect. And the next thing you know, like, I have my I just start taking the pills. I'm not eating anything. And as the sun's setting, I remember, like, I'm just, like, shaky. Mm-hmm. Eyes are doing that twitching thing. And I'm going to look to take my last pill, and I fumble it. It's so bad. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I dropped so quick. I dropped it like it was hot. And I'm looking on the floor, and I'm searching through the bushes just like a dog looking for its first meal in over a year. And my friends just are staring like, what's going on? One calls me over, tries telling me, Pineda, you got to get your shit together. And that's the last thing I heard. I collapsed. And I had my first overdose. And, like, I didn't have a pulse, didn't have a heartbeat, wasn't breathing. And luckily, my friend's dad came up from behind me and gave me a Heimlich maneuver inadvertently. And I wake up the next morning, and I'm that guy that, like, begs for the consequences not to come down. And I asked him, please don't tell my parents. Please, please, please. I woke up. I'm fine. I know not to do this. And I meant it when I said, like, never again.
Right. Of course we do.
I lost my sense of taste. Like, and food was, like, the biggest thing in my life at that point, to be fair. Like, I've loved food my entire life.
Right.
And when it took away my sense of taste for food, I was just like, oh my God, never again.
That is just too far.
Right. And, of course, I'm getting from the dealer who's a kid that I coached. Oh, my God, it's a whole other story. And he's like, he's calling me, I'm so sorry. And, of course, you said you're sorry? Mm-hmm. Well, yes, go on.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
it is your fault, yes.
I'm in bed. I almost died. And, I didn't, I called everybody off. No, I'm not going to come after. Like, the whole thing. You know what I mean? And it's literally 3.5 weeks later.
Wow.
I find cocaine, and that's another overdose at 21. And like I said, that's just, I'm moving on from one to the next. It's almost like at the time, and I was only dating women at this time. Obviously, you can tell I'm going to move on to men later on, as I said that. But I was exchanging drugs just like I would with women. Mm-hmm. The moment you got too close, or the moment you didn't serve a purpose, like, we're on to the next. And that's ecstasy. Okay, now I know. But, of course, I would do it later on down the road.
I did that, too. I would have people in my life who... I felt like I kept everybody at an arm's distance. And years later, I was in recovery, and somebody said that I ran out of people, that I used people and loved things. And I was that person. Partly out of self-protection, partly because I believed that if anybody got close enough to me, I'd be too vulnerable. They would have something on me, or they would possibly judge something that I was so afraid that if they saw, they wouldn't love me. So, like, this fear of abandonment, and I would keep people in my life, and I kept mainly men, but I'm bisexual. Mm-hmm. And so I kept men in my life that I felt like I didn't want to have a full relationship with, and I wasn't going to have sex with, but I knew that that's what they wanted with me, and so I kept them in my life so I wouldn't be alone. But I kept everybody at an arm's distance, and I used to joke that, like the whole Terminator with the mask, and then if you see somebody who goes, yeah. I felt like I did that with everybody. I would be like, oh, Brian, oh, Johan, and then everything was always from the perspective of my own self-concept and whether or not somebody was someone to protect myself from or someone to get something from. And so I was very lonely, and I was a model and a dancer, and I made money hand over fist, and people wanted me and to be with me, and I was alone because nobody could tell me that they loved me, because who did they love? The story I gave them? The story they had about me? They didn't know who I was. I didn't even know who I was,
Yeah.
right? So when you're talking about, swapping people out, as soon as something gets a little bit too much of a feeling, as soon as it's, you know what, this isn't fun anymore, or you know what, this is not good for me, bye-byes, and then later on, swinging past any concept of function and normal and healthy and staying long after and sharing and with people that I shouldn't. Staying in relationships so long that God's out in the parking lot honking his horn going, come on. I'm not guiding you to do this. This is all you. Because I was afraid of being the girl I was.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. So, okay, so ecstasy.
Yeah, and I just want to speak on a little bit what you said there. Like, it just reminded me, too, like, way before the drinking and the drugs, even though I said at 3, but it wasn't. It was just a blip. You know what I mean? It's just a lineage in the a tapestry in my lineage kind of thing. And from the ages of 3 to 15, I had a family member that was molesting me, and I think there's where the sense of unease comes from. And it's not so much what they did, because what I have found out in my walk of life, I mean, easily 70% of the people that I have gotten intimate with I'm not talking sexual, I'm talking just on an intimate level of one human talking to another or in a group, easily 7 out of 10 people have had some kind of trauma like that. It happens way more than it's talked about.
Of course.
And in my own walk of life, I can tell you that my biggest problem with the whole thing, looking back on it, everything is retrospect for me today, is I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's not like there wasn't like a class like the Catholic Church wasn't like, Brian, we're going to keep that under wraps. It is all manifestation
it's unspoken.
of me.
It's the don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just don't pretend you have it all together. It's inherent in our society, not just in dysfunctional houses or anything.
Right.
It's inherent in it. Like magazines full of who do you need to be loved.
Okay.
And what picket fence, what amount of kids, what degree, what amount of money, how does your body need to look?
And you can imagine living in Orange County where you can't hide. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows your business. It doesn't matter if you are a homeless person. Mm-hmm. We know what corner you work on. Mm-hmm. That's your corner.
Yeah.
We actually find out scandals that these people would park behind gas stations. They're making over $100,000 a year being homeless. Like, we know what's going on. Homeless better believe we know what's going on behind people who have homes or apartments or all these things. And so you can imagine early on with everyone being in your business that you have to, like, my perception is I have to mount to something.
Yeah.
I can't talk about these problems. What if you find out some intimate details that make me ungodly because
and
there's
I don't
a truth.
Fit in.
There's a truth. I think I'm a god.
Yeah.
That's how bad this thing gets up here.
Yeah, we're so special.
Oh my God, uniquely terminal.
Yeah.
Uniquely important.
Yeah.
Just completely self-sufficient.
I'm the worst piece of shit or the best piece of shit.
Right.
And there's no in between.
Right.
But yeah.
So for me and my story, and I think just riffing on what you were saying before we get back to the story, is that right there, like, that's a catalyst for my problems. And it gets overlooked. Even if you know it and life is good, there's always going to be that thing inside.
Is the family member still alive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had conversations with that family member about it or not?
Before recovery, 2 attempts, and it was just fuming anger. And even to the point of knowing what they speak out about against, like, they take it to the extreme of speaking out against, like, the LGBTQ community, you know what I mean? But once again, I don't think that this is something that identifies someone. I used to think for a long time, I've always wondered too, like, was that choice made for me? Because, like you said, I am bisexual. The best ones are, Lisa. Okay.
Thank you very much. I mean, I agree, but
no, I don't.
You must have an open mind in this world,
right? And I don't shame anyone for what you are, whatever your sexual appetite is. But for me,
I love people.
Yes.
I love people, and I'm attracted to certain personalities and certain energy.
Yeah.
And there's certain people that come into my life, and I don't think it has to matter if they're a male or female.
I want to hear your story.
Yeah.
That's what I think, and also too, and I think that's what follows my story too, is when I'm in the right side of my brain and life is happy, I'm in pursuit of hearing how you're getting through life. I don't use those terms as a child or as a teenager, but I am so curious. That's
and also, like, not to get all, because we did an episode on LGBT, but I digress. I feel like I'm attracted to people who are more open-minded.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I'm attracted to people who are willing to beat to their own drum. And in a society that is going to give them a lot of flack for it, like I'm attracted to a person who overcomes the narrative around them and maybe the narrative in their own family and says, you know what, this is what resonates for me. And I don't know, nature and nurture. I don't know entirely what made me bisexual. I don't know if it's watching my dad walk around in his underwear that turned me off to men for a second. I don't know. I don't know if it's watching Playboy through my childhood and deciding that this was my school to watch Playboy because I needed to be beautiful so that I can be not my mom, you know, and not get treated like my mom did by my dad. I don't know. But I do know at the end of the day, what I'm attracted to is that intimacy, you know, to that feeling I have with a person. And I know that it doesn't have to be because they're male or female, and I'm glad for that. You know, nobody needs to be that. You know, but it allows for more of inclusive, more tolerant, more welcoming headspace for me. I don't need to be focusing on the differences.
And I can say for anyone else out there that's like struggling with the identity portion of sexuality, like I did for a long time. You know, it took me a while to get to be okay with myself, and that has a lot to do with recovery. Like I was okay with myself probably at the age of 21, but I didn't talk about it. If you brought it up, okay, it's already on your radar. I've already come clear with it. But it took me a while to get there, and I will say that like whether that choice was made for me before, if I go with that line or not, it doesn't matter, because in the long run, what's come out of it is what it did for me, what it doesn't do, like you said, for other people. I don't have a closed mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like however you vote, what your ethnicity is. And actually, I digress a little bit. I do have a hiccup with people who are closed minded. Like, I guess that's where mine comes in. It's just like, why are you sticking to archaic ways? Like, that's not the way of the world. How about we be in the present, realize that we are all coexisting together. Like, we're not living in that time of fear. We're in a whole new dawn of the age. It's a program.
It's a closed loop that they're running, because we all have closed loops. We all have ideas of this is how it needs to be, until we have something sufficiently come up that bangs against it, that makes us question it. You know, and overall in our society, more and more people are coming out and talking about what's happening behind closed doors, and it's forcing people to reevaluate, and eventually there's going to be a place where it's going to be way more accepted than not accepted, period. You know, and at this time we're going to take a quick break. Please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any 12-step program or should replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. See you in a bit. The Meeting Space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we can continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission, and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The recovery store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the recovery store and the meeting space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you
who want everyone to have a place to go to heal.
Welcome back to The Real Recovery Show. Remember that you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and on Amazon Fire TV. You can listen to us on the PHLV radio app, or you can get our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And if you're interested in being on an episode, or you want to see all of our previous episodes, just go to themeetingspace.com. That's themeetingspace.com. You can fill out an intake form, and all of our episodes are posted weekly there as well. And so before the break, we were just having a little chit-chat about having an open mind, and now we're going to return to our timeline of this is what it was like before I got sober.
Sure.
Take it away.
So we were talking about the overdose of cocaine at 21. We can breeze through that. I mean, just take a sniff on it and you understand exactly what I'm saying. I don't encourage people to do it, but we can just breeze right through it. You know what I mean? It was an overdose at 21. The first time I smoked pot, I actually had some meth sprinkled on it. And that was actually my first intake with that, and it was scary. But once again, it took me 45 minutes to drive a mile in my grandma's Buick, a mile on a straight road. Right? Because I'm pressing the brake. I think someone's behind me. They were doing construction. The blinkers on the road signs that were out there because they were doing construction, they're setting off, and they look like... Yeah, they look like the cops. I'm like, oh my God, my life's over. That's why it took me 45 minutes to go a mile. And once again, I'm in full panic. This thing, it just doesn't feel good in the moment. But once again, I survive it.
Right.
And now what's happening with my use is, and obviously in cocaine, it's easy to understand drinking and cocaine go hand in hand. I'm loving the chaos. I'm loving the liberation. I'm loving the pushing of limits.
Overcome.
It's
but
just
the
like my
overcoming
childhood.
in the wrong direction.
Just like my childhood. Told me not to do it. I did the DARE classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? We did the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the whole thing in high school. I know the right thing, and it just feels good to do the thing I'm not supposed to do, period. I didn't grow up in a household where we did drugs at all. And here I am at 23. I convinced myself that I convinced my parents to have my friend whose father had taken his door off his room, which would have been an ominous warning right there that maybe this isn't a good thing. He pulls me aside, don't move him in. I manipulate so good. Like, and I don't like to brag about my stupidity, it's just being real with where I was at.
Salesmanship.
Yeah. Convinced my parents to move him in, blah, blah, blah. He steals, I kick him out, I change the locks. Another thing where it's like, oh, no way. And I start biking 40 miles a day, and I'm substituting this thing. But in the back of my mind, I remember how good methamphetamine felt. And I wasn't doing any of the sex stuff. Like, that's what we're going to get into. But I was training. I was playing professional racquetball. I could train for 5 hours a day. I was working on things around the home. I was making these incredible breakfasts.
Highly accomplishing lots of stuff initially.
Oh my gosh. And what doesn't get talked about enough, and well, because it's my experience, everyone's different. Those million thoughts that are going on every second, which is a real thing, I felt like I finally funneled.
Focused. Yeah.
It funneled like this thing I've been looking for. Like, man, if I had just figured out methamphetamine back in the 3rd grade, like, I could have done Mrs. Fleming's all of her homework assignments she had been asking for. But the truth was, it's just out of hand.
It's one of the reasons why that even happens is that the foggy ADHD, ADD is usually because somebody's histamine level's too high and they're like not able to focus. And so meth can take their adrenaline and spike it up higher than their histamine level, and now they're clear.
And I love a good rush. I love being afraid of something and then doing it. And at
You're
first,
adrenaline junkie.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's like the next level. And so now he's been kicked out. My friend's been kicked out. I'm kind of getting that place of uneasement. I'm on Craigslist. I'm doing the. I've had all the experiences.
When you can be on Craigslist, they don't do that anymore.
Okay, and I went straight for the personals. I'll be the first to tell you.
Yeah, they don't have the personals anymore on Craigslist.
I don't know. It's been.
I know what you're talking about. To know that they don't have the personals on Craigslist anymore.
And I was that guy like. Because, and I remember, I got to back up a little. In 6th grade, I remember too, and because of the shame of it happening as a child, I don't talk about it. I convinced myself that looking at other men in the locker room in the 6th grade, like that was like, what's wrong with me? These are the dialogues that I'm having. And it's taken another man to show me like, no, we just naturally size each other up. Yeah. And looking back on it, like, oh my God, that's really what I was doing. But that's not what this is saying to me, because it wants me so uncomfortable. That's when I take the action to include something to make me more than what I am. At least that's the illusion
I did the same thing when women would give me a hug. I would be so afraid that they would think I'm attracted to them. Like, I would hug them and I'd be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Right.
And I'm not even necessarily attracted to the woman that's hugging me, but I'm very well aware of her body against mine. And I'm just like, I'm so uncomfortable. I don't know where to put my hands. I don't know how to do this, because I wouldn't admit to myself enough that it was like normal and everybody knows it's, because it wasn't.
I like my dialogue is I know exactly what you're thinking. Like, this hug went on too long. Why is a man
Or when the
hugging
guys
a
would
man?
hug me, I'm like, oh, I know why you're hugging me.
You were
Watch
probably
your
right about that
hand,
one.
buddy.
Truth is, you're probably right about that
I
one.
probably am. God bless.
But yeah, so like now let's just go ahead and fast forward into the dirty. And I call it the dirty because I was just I'm going to cut straight to it. I was a pervert by the time methamphetamine took a major role in my life. Like, I'm starting to see that everything's taken a backseat. You know what I mean? And I start, like I said, on this Craigslist, and then it moves on to sex sites, and I'm not quite on Grindr or Tinder yet because they're just not around, I don't think. And I'm primarily, I'm meeting up with men because I want this first experience. Here comes the rush of something, and I think in my head the dialogue is, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. It's not the kind of family I grew up in, and all the things. And but I'll tell you what, I remember the first time I was on Men Seeking Men, and it said, do you want to come over and party with a capital T, which I am like, it's like right there, like, why did you capitalize it?
Like,
I have that
glowing
dialogue.
off the page.
Yeah, I have the dialogue. Like, why is it there? Like, okay, whatever, I know parties. I show up in a collared shirt to a hotel room with a bottle of vodka. Because that's the only kind of party that I know how to do, you know what I mean? And when I walked in and things were happening that, like, that's not even the kind of porn I was watching, you know what I mean? Like, I was a very basic kind of porn watcher, and it was crazy. I got my shirt off was the most I did, and it was the first time, like, I can tell you, I can really fit into any scene, and I felt like just like a fly on the wall, like, what's happening? I was just in my head the whole time. But once again, I survived. I take my shirt off. I don't do anything. I'm watching things happen I've never really seen before. And I remember, once again, I survived it, and I got through it. And there's that next level of rush. And now I'm off to the races. Now I want to be part of it.
I'm realizing a lot about myself and listening to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, because here's where we can
similar, like going to like adult parties and being like, you know, not willing to let go because I'm afraid of what somebody's gonna do, and then go, okay, I got this part, you know, and then being a stripper and having like, I'm never gonna this, I'm never gonna that, and then going, oh, I understand this now, I understand that part, you know, like, and whatever like that, and just that, it's just interesting. Go ahead.
So we'll fast
like
forward.
It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. It was like, I'm good. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing because the mind is set in such a way, like scientifically.
And honestly, we should be facing our fears, right? We should be. There's elements of like healthy somewhat in that, you know,
100%.
where we're like, we should be able to not be afraid and of what people think. Yeah. You know, we should be able to like do what we feel is right for us. Absolutely. But what we're doing, maybe not so much.
The brain is set in such a way to protect itself, and so when, like I said, as a kid, what it do to protect me, we don't talk about it. As I go into these things, it's more of a justification, rationalization, minimalization kind of thing, and it's okay. Like, no one knows. Like, that's once again, here come the secrets, and here comes
your secret life.
Oh my God,
that belongs only to you.
It felt something to have that, you know, coming from Orange County where everyone knows your business, to now I have this thing that I don't think anyone knows outside of. I'm doing a lot of meth, so the government and the CIA who are after me for sure. Yeah. Never once contacted me, but they're after me kind of thing. Right. But I remember like my pervertedness like really started coming out, and I started really exploring, and to the point where GHB enters the scene, and now it goes from like, oh, I want to hang out with you, and I take some GHB, and we're your closest 25 friends. You know what I mean? Like, let's get it on and cracking. I want that thing to be a revolving door, and then I had a consequence. A friend of mine, body found dead in Barstow, 5 bullet holes. I know the whole thing that went down. It's just a very dirty thing that happened, and I knew exactly what happened. I was like, I took a step back. And I get in a relationship with who was my soulmate at the time. I was convinced that was my soulmate. We dated when we were 18. We have all this life in between for the both of us separately. And now we're back together, 2 years blissful. She filled that thing that I had not experienced in the art of love. Like, I'd loved a couple girls before that, but this was like this was adult love. This was we're moving in. I'm gonna do a lot for you because I'm moving to your city. We're gonna hang out with your family, your friends. You don't want to move, I'll move for you. Like just deep down building this case that will eventually be a resentment.
And then also this need you have to have your own thing not getting met. Because you're going to be the person you think you're supposed to be for the person that you love and do all the things for that person, but that need to have your own thing, as sick as it was to have it be a toxic thing, but it was your own thing, doesn't get met, and that builds up that need. I know exactly what that feels like, where when you're trying to be good to a point where there's a part of you that just feels neglected and needs
big time.
It needs to be acted on. And I've had to do a lot of work on integrating that, Lisa. And like, let's take the healthy and let's kind of transition some of this and let's really like love this part of me and find out like why she needs to be that. What has to happen. So
yeah, and I'll say this too. I got to preface this before I say like really what I captured in what we call the PMP or the party and play kind of hotel rooms, whether it's men, whether it's women. I did all the things out there, primarily men for me, and I'll get to why that is. But I really don't know if a lot of people will experience finding their soulmate, right? Or finding someone of what you believe is at that time, and rekindle souls and all that kind of stuff. And I really found like I found this in this woman, and I loved her the best I could, not realizing I'm about to jump in the depths of my addiction. And but like when you have that,
yeah,
and it's so beautiful. And it was blissful for 2 years.
You want to do everything you can to protect it.
We already had our whole life planned. Like it was a beautiful thing, and everything's working. But there's this tick on the inside because it's never enough for Brian. And now that we know that part of my story, to move on to really what was so great about those hotel rooms, those mansions at times, and then they turn into like floors of cockroaches. Like it gets really bad for me. I remember the first time, so I walked in that hotel room and it was different. Now I knew what to expect, but I walked in and I mean, gorgeous people. I don't know if I've ever been in a situation where it's been more gorgeous. And I walked in, all eyes were on me. That's really what I was after in my addiction. Like, yes, I have this obsession in mind that I cannot overcome by myself. Oh my gosh, here's everything I want, that unique, being uniquely different and identifiable. And I finally found my story, and I knew I was a God. Look at this. But still on the inside though, even though I feel that, it's also like running, it's almost like a DNA molecule running side by side of, am I enough? Even though all eyes are on me and getting messages, and that was like and there was like a good 7-year run of like just feeling that the problem is I'm getting messier and messier. The relationship is destroyed in 4.5 years. First treatment happens after that 2 years. I suck there because I last 25 days. Someone threatens my life, so I'm like, I think I'm healed. Okay, I just overshot the mark. Right. I tap on her window. She's just like, what are you doing? Just need an
adjustment. We're okay now.
Yeah. I tap on her window. She's like, what's going on? And within 2 hours, we're back in the bed together. She's happy. Life is good. I mean, that's how much I can just take the one person I love and just do so dirty just to say whatever it is so I can get back in that. Because I'm not going to go back home to mom and dad. Not yet. It's a yet for sure.
Right.
And it just dives deeper down. It takes me 6 months to put a bottle into my mouth again. 8 months later from that point to pick up the pipe. And I mean, I run it bad. And it gets dark. And I mean, like any other good addict at 32, I move in with mom and dad. And within an hour of moving out, leaving the love of my life. An hour, I'm on Grindr. I'm looking for the next place to go because I can't stand the totality of my
anywhere but here,
choices.
anytime but now. Gotta get. Yep, absolutely.
And it just gets worse from there. So now, like, let's fast forward through all the terribleness and 45150s, right? She actually walked me through one of them. I was collecting STDs like they were Pokemon. You got to catch them all. Like, that's how sick it is in my mind. I joked about that in the hotel rooms. That's how sick I am. Like, I'm joking about these consequences that I'm getting. 5 overdoses, attempt of suicide. And at that point, I had been raped 4 times. Because Brian can't stop showing up. Brian can't stop acting a certain way. I found my hustle when drugs really took the priority. Screw everything. I'm going in this road. I want to be a porn star. I want to be a prostitute. Like, Brian, whoa, you were raised Catholic.
Right.
You were working for nonprofits, helping people with, we had some friends that were politically campaigning in Orange County successfully, good present parents, good role models in my life, club pro, playing professional sports, traveling almost all of North America. Whoa. And look at all these imaginary lines we drew that we're never going to do these things. How did we end up here? And it ends me up running away from a gang to Las Vegas.
To get sober?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just to get away from
This
there.
is a people are shooting guns like we're
just to be safe, but not to get sober yet.
yeah
Gotcha.
yeah people are shooting guns, threatening my life, gaslighting me. I can't trust anyone. I can't stay off sites that I can't trust. Like, and really, I remember my mom. I was such an a-hole. I called my mom Dr. Mom over here, thinks she knows everything, telling me why people drink and use, and I was like, Mom, maybe it isn't even about the drinking and drugs. They're just addicted to the chaos. And for the first time, I'd solved one of my riddles.
It is true.
This is where I've taken
It
this
is
thing
true.
to.
We have an inner pharmacy. We are addicted to excitement.
Yeah.
And also the need to be different and special. We have that. This need to be heard, this need to be seen, this need to matter, and as our shame builds up, it makes it harder and harder to experience as we bottom. Okay, so now, are we getting sober yet?
We're let's get sober right here. So I come out here to Vegas not to get sober, just to die. I know I'm going to die because I'm already
Vegas
gone to
is the place to do
institutions,
it,
right?
sure. Yeah.
I haven't had a run-in with the law, but basically my life's been threatened. Even when I get to Vegas, I'm surrounded by 9 guns are pulled out on me. Like, people are just they're sick of me.
Yeah.
But they don't even waste a bullet on me. They just know this guy's going to kill himself. Like, why?
Yeah.
And I just remember at that point, he had said some things that just was like, went from like my murder, like from my assassin to someone who was like an angel, just saying something and just caught my attention. I did exactly what he said. And
What did he say?
he said, you're going to go exactly where you say you're going to go, or we're going to know. And if you pick up again, it's going to pick up right where it left off. And like a blink of an eye, that was the truth of all of my use. No matter how well I tried to arrange it, it always got
Ends up
worse.
the same. Yeah.
And then he said, he told me to pick up a book to read, and you're going to read every single day, and you're going to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm my fucking problem, quote unquote. And I did. I went to St. Rose Dominican, and this is how quick I changed my mind after a 14-hour hold, which is kind of weird. I do a little bit of going across the street, come back across, I see the parking structure, I get on top, and I'm going to jump. That's just how much it just is not okay. Like, I've gotten sober enough to I see all the consequences. What have I done? I've run out of money. I'm in a state I shouldn't be. My parents, all these things, people who love me, and I've pushed them all away. And I can't handle the responsibility of what that looks like because I've never engaged in anything that's going to fix that in the right way. And I swear on my life, Lisa, God intervenes. He turns on my phone in my back pocket on an EDM station, turns on Beyonce and Ed Sheeran's song Perfect, which was supposed to be my wedding song, without me touching it.
I love that part of your story. I got chills when I first heard you say that.
I cried. I cried. Even now, I'm kind of getting to myself because it was a pivotal moment. There was a lot of pivotal moments in those last 2 days before I get to St. Rose Dominican. And I crawled down, and I finally did the one thing that I'd struggled with my entire life. Can you help me? And they get me to crossroads, and like,
it's the most important thing that anybody ever will do that changes the trajectory of everything, is to get to a place where they admit to themselves, okay, now, I seriously want help, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And if a person doesn't get that, they don't get it.
They don't, and
They might get relief. They might get a little bit of sobriety. They might get a little bit of recovery. They might get some time. But I've been around a long time, I could safely say now. I've been around aspects of recovery my whole life in certain ways, on and off. But I see when the light goes on, and when somebody takes it seriously. And we started this episode saying that you were one of those people that you could see that they're taking it seriously. I hope you always take it seriously. I hope you never forget why you take it seriously.
Yeah, I take recovery seriously. I don't take me so seriously.
Yeah, that's perfect.
You know what I mean?
So you also work in the field now, don't you?
I do. So I had a taste of treatment because I went through it. I couldn't last any. I've done 7 of them, and I couldn't last any of them. Mm-hmm. This one I actually completed for the first time, and I can tell you it's a healthy fear that when you've done something for the first time, you really are trying to get sober and clean. That it's appropriate to have a fear of, oh my God, you're releasing me back out to the world. I get some of my things that were kind of like,
what do I do now?
Monitored, yeah. And now I have the possibility with 34 relapses or 33 at the time to go back out. Actually, no, I had my 34th in treatment. So, and here I am I'm more prone to mess this up than to do it right. I have no experience doing it right. I'm living in the miracle for the first time. And understanding that what a gift this is. And so I go through sober living, and I've gone through a couple jobs, and I finally landed in a place where I was working at the Davis Funeral Home, and I get a call from a friend, and the mother of his child was a manager at Landmark, and said she was looking for someone. He goes, I think you'd be perfect for it. And I made the decision one day. I was like, I think I'd rather work with the dying than with the dead.
Ooh, love that. Very catchy.
And
should be your shirt.
Yeah. And I go to Landmark. And I tell you what, if you want to button up your program, it's not for everyone. I'll tell you right now, it's not for everyone. But if you want to button up your program and really practice some spiritual ways in your life and some ideas that are conducive to recovery, what a great place.
Yeah, we did an episode of somebody who works there and somebody who went through the program there. So, yeah. Yeah,
so Landmark has, and it's different than the rehab I went through. I can sit there and take anyone's inventory of how you're not doing it right, as I've never opened a single one in my entire life.
Right.
But I also understand that, like, my pathway to recovery is unique to me. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, a 12-step program or celebrate recovery or treatment only or rolling the dice or just stopping altogether. I can't tell you what it takes. I just know it takes what it takes. And however you find your recovery, run with it.
I'm also a strong advocate, even though I run a facility that has like a lot of 12-step meetings in it, that the 12-step meeting is not the only thing, and that even if somebody does attend a 12-step meeting, they really need to avail themselves of everything that could possibly be helpful to them. Sometimes outside help, sometimes other types of anger management classes or whatever, and not be afraid to ask for help, because we're all awakening from our own internal journey and having to unfuck our minds. And everybody's minds is like their own little Rubik's Cube twisted in their own way, and you can't take the stickers off and put them on differently. You just got to actually learn your way of getting yourself back with your higher power, with yourself, and making peace with your life. So thank you so much. I loved interviewing you. I knew that I would. And I loved everything that we ended up talking about. And so thank you so much for being so transparent and allowing your story to help break stigma and let people see themselves in the mirror of your portrayal of your life. And not everything's going to be the same, because as we just said, our paths are all different, but they're not. There are similarities, and there's inspiration to be gained from everybody's walk. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
And thank you for joining us on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and gracious host, PHLV Radio here in Las Vegas. See you next week.